We're going to conclude our week together in the Psalms by looking at Psalm number 13, Psalm 13. And this is another one of those Psalms where the psalmist is struggling and feeling under great pressure. There's a little poem by Anne Johnson Flint that would identify what he's going through, and maybe what you're going through as well. It says, pressed out of measure and pressed to all length, pressed so intently it seems beyond strength, pressed in body and pressed in soul, pressed in the mind till the dark surges roll. Pressure by foes, pressure by friends, pressure on pressure till life nearly ends, pressed into loving the staff and the rod, pressed into knowing no helper but God. So she writes about a person, maybe herself, who is under pressure, who feels pressed by all these things, even things such as friends. But she sees these things ultimately as something that presses her closer to God as her helper. And many of the Psalms deal with that very same issue. Psalm 13 is no exception. In Psalm 13, we start off by seeing that our psalmist, who's probably David, is once again feeling abandoned by God. In verse 1, he says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day long? How long will my enemy be exalted over me?" So remember, a couple of days ago, we saw in another psalm where he was saying, "How long, O Lord?" And now he's back at it. So he's been going through this time of pressure and danger and struggle for a while. And it's not just a afternoon thing or maybe even a few days. It could have been going on for weeks or months. And he's calling out to the Lord, "How long, O Lord, are you going to let this happen?" He feels that the Lord has walked away from him, that he's no longer there, that he's abandoned. Then he moves on with the cries of anguish in verses 3 and 4. This is how he's feeling. And one of the things the Psalms does to us is put the biblical words into our mouths. I think sometimes we're concerned that if we tell God what we really feel and how we're really hurting or really struggling, that somehow that's blasphemous or sinful. And of course it could be. We can come to the place of where we're so irritated at God, so angry at God, that we move over to this area of sinfulness. But on the other hand, the Lord already knows what's in your hearts. He knows where you're hurting. You're not telling him anything he doesn't know. And so to articulate our feelings is not a wrong thing. And to do so in the proper way, like the psalmist does, is very healthy and very good. And so the Psalms help us understand that and help us articulate that which is in our hearts. And so we find a man who's already struggling with God, already wondering how long this is going to go on. He now opens up his heart and he pours out the anguish that is there. He says, verse 3, "Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Enlighten my eyes, that I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my adversaries will rejoice when I am shaken." So he's saying, look, Lord, consider me. Open my eyes. Let me see what's going on here. Let me see the truth. Let me see you, or I am going to perish. And my enemies are going to gloat over me. This is hard for David to consider. Not only that he would perish, but that the enemy would say, I told you so. God wasn't there for you. God's not going to pull you through this. David is in anguish over those kinds of things. But then he has, once again, this ray of hope. The Lord, as he calls out for the Lord to open his eyes, the Lord does that. In verse 5, "But I have trusted in your loving kindness. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me." What a turnaround. In reading the earlier verses, who would have thought that he would come to the end of the psalm and turn it all around? And we have to ask the question, why? What changed in David, or David's circumstance, that he turned this all around? And as far as we know, his circumstances really don't change. As far as we know, his adversaries are still after him. But what has changed is his perspective and basically his trust in God and who God is. I have trusted in your loving kindness. I can trust you because I know who you are. You are filled with mercy. You're filled with hope. You're filled with comfort. You're filled with love, and I can trust that. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I know one way or the other you're going to rescue me. And I will sing to the Lord. You don't sing to the Lord in this way unless your heart is overflowing. And so it does, because he's dealt bountifully with me. David may not have been rescued yet, but he knows that somehow, some way, the Lord will see him through, even this dark hour that he's going through now. And that gives him a great hope and a great joy, so that he begins in despair and pronouncing woe, and he ends in singing to the Lord. May that be the way we see our lives as we trust in him as well. May these words give us a wonderful weekend in the Lord.